Okay, it's April 3rd, and we are in chapter 4 today, and we are mainly looking at two questions. The next one I want you to be thinking about is how would you describe Pennyweather? And support your answer with text evidence, it says. So, we're going to be learning a little bit more about her from the opinion of another one of the boys. So let's look at this. Dinner was long over when Pennyweather let them out of the cellar and sent Mike and Frankie to their dormitories. Most of the boys on Mike's floor were huddled around the radio, listening to Buck Rogers in the 25th Century. They must have behaved at dinner for Mrs. Godfrey to give them the privilege. Mike flopped down on his cot. Mouse, who was reading the funnies in a week's old newspaper, sat up, pulled 2 apples and a hunk of bread from behind his pillow, and held them out. You only miss cream chicken, otherwise known as mystery gravy. I smuggled Frankie some food with his buddies. The little lads thought it was the most important mission of their lives. Hey, thanks, said Mike, taking the food and biting into an apple. Mouse was almost 16 and one of the oldest at Bishop's. Most of the boys didn't like him because he was Pennyweather's pet, but Mike thought him decent enough. His name was Stephen, though no one ever called him that. With his milky skin, pale eyes, and white hair buzzed so close to his head that pink scalp showed through, Mouse couldn't complain one bit about his nickname. Danny Moriarty was in the nurse's office next to the visitation room today, said Mouse. He heard what happened. You really punch a guy? And did Frankie bite him and draw blood? Mike nodded. My punch was more of a push, but Frankie left a set of teeth marks. Heard Pennyweather's going to put you out to hire. I'm not even close to 14, said Mike. Mouse shrugged. Wise up. Bishop's is a work mill. You ain't been around this time of year before, but you'll see. Farmers are here first thing every morning taking us older boys for day work. If their farm is far away, they take us for weeks, then bring us back when the plowing or picking or stacking is finished. Our measly stipend goes to Pennyweather for clothes and school supplies. You see any clothes or school supplies? Okay, so a stipend is a small amount that you would get paid. It's kind of like a paycheck. Why doesn't someone tell? Ain't no one to tell, said Mouse. Old man Bishop owns this place but lives in the city. Heard the cooks talking about how Pennyweather only has to deliver a certain amount of money to him each month to keep him happy. She pockets the rest. None of them dare say a word with so many of their husbands skint and out of work. Can't afford to lose their jobs. Did Pennyweather really say she's getting rid of all the lowers and filling Bishop's with Hathaway boys? Mike nodded. Uppers bring in the money. Lowers take up space. She's all business. Mouse chewed on his lip and nodded. That's going to make things difficult for me. I won't be one of the oldest anymore. Might be time. Mike frowned. I thought you had it good. Aren't you Pennyweather's? He caught himself and closed his mouth. Pet? I admit it. I'm as nice as pie to Pennyweather, so she gives me privileges. What's wrong with that? Speaking of which, tomorrow morning I'm taking the wagon to make a delivery to Four Corners 'cause the truck broke down. She told me to get someone to go with me. Want to come? Be back by noon. Beats working for Otis pulling weeds and rocks from his fields. One of the boys can let Frankie know. Mike studied the apple core. He hadn't been away from Bishop since the day they'd arrived. Plus, boys were never fostered out on weekends, so Frankie wouldn't be called up. And the kid liked working at Otis's because at the end of the day, Mr. Otis pressed a penny into each boy's hand. Mike nodded. Yeah, I'll go. Before dawn, Mike and Mouse rode in the flatbed wagon down the long road leading away from Bishop's. On either side, cornfields walled in their view of everything but the green stalks and the gray sky. The air was cool, the horses clip-clopping hypnotic. For a while, neither boy spoke. The morning brightened. When the fields stopped, the world opened up on vast pastures. Sure is pretty, said Mouse, nudging Mike with his elbow. Anything is prettier than Bishop's. Mike nodded toward the back of the wagon bed. He and Mouse had carefully stacked a dozen boxes on top of an old quilt to pad the ride. What's inside, anyway? Supposed to be a secret, but one time I came down to the cellar before Pennyweather had finished packing. The cupboards were open and filled to choking with canned peaches, plums, jams, you name it. Jars had labels on them that said Methodist Women's Auxiliary. You know those church ladies who show up at Bishop's every month? The smiley ones with the covered baskets, said Mike. Mouse nodded. They make pints of preserves for us poor orphans. Pennyweather changes the labels, sells them, and pockets the money. One day I noticed a jar was missing the sealing ring, so I asked if I could have it. Told her it wouldn't sell anyway and how I love peaches, and that I always heard she was fair-minded. She let me eat the whole thing. So Pennyweather has a heart. Mouse nodded. Everybody has a heart. Sometimes you gotta work to find it. One thing I learned is that if there's something you want or need to know from grown folks, you gotta step up and ask for it mannerly. Plead your case, that's what I say. More times than not, you'll get exactly what you ask for. You know the saying, you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. If Granny had said it once, she'd said it 1,000 times. Means you get more by being nice and polite than being otherwise. That's right. Made my time at Bishop's more bearable, that's for sure. What do you want to do once you're out of there? Mike frowned. I can't think past getting Frankie settled. You tell Frankie what Pennyweather's up to? Mike shook his head. Didn't have it in me. Listen, said Mouse, you got to keep Frankie out of the state home. Ain't fit for a river rat. Kids have lice and fleas. Last year it was quarantined 'cause 2 boys died from a fever. Dead. Makes Bishop's look like the Biltmore Hotel. Next time he gets called up, you got to make sure he goes. Pennyweather has to let you know where he is. It's a law. You can write him. Heard they even let brothers visit on holidays. Face it, you're confined to Bishop's till you're 18, but Frankie might have a chance to get out. Make a plan. You got to have a plan. They passed a sign that said 4 corners, 2 miles. Before the intersection of 2 lanes, Mouse stopped the horse and handed Mike the reins. Here's where I get off. I'm going on the lam. What? You're running away? Mike's thoughts raced. Hey, I don't want any trouble at Bishop's. Lamb means he's going to be on the run, that he's leaving. Relax. Deliver the boxes to 4 corners, get the money, and take it to Pennyweather. Tell her I took off and you couldn't stop me. She'll report me, but I'll be long gone before a truant officer can catch up. Besides, all she cares about is someone bringing back the dough. Dough meaning money here, right? Good. He jumped down from the seat. But where will you go? What will you do? Don't worry, got a plan. When I turn 18, I got 2 choices. The U.S. Army or the Tree Army. The what? Civilian Conservation Corps. Lads call it the Tree Army. It's part of the president's New Deal to get the country out of the sad slump we're in. It's jobs for young men like yours truly. I can work any number of places, planting trees, stocking rivers with fish, building parks. Get paid $35 a month, too. I figure I'll do that for a year or so until I've seen some of the U.S. of A. Then I'll join the military and see the world. Know a guy in the Marines told me there's always a war to fight somewhere in the world. Civilian Conservation Corps was called the CCC, and my granddad was actually in it. And a lot of our state parks were built by boys in the CCC. What you're going to do until you turn 18? I'm almost 17. I can get by for a year. I got a friend who works at the train station in Philly, can sneak me on without a ticket. Heading to New York City. I'll live on the streets. Done it before. I know the safe places to sleep, the soup kitchens. Even know how to sneak into Yankee games and theaters. Mouse grinned. Mike felt a tug at his heart. New York City. That was supposed to be his plan, too. His and Frankie's. Mouse climbed into the wagon bed and moved the boxes aside until he pulled the quilt from beneath him. He folded it like a jelly roll, tucked it under his arm, and jumped down. If you get Frankie sorted out and want to join me, my friend at the station is McAllister. Tell him I sent you. He'll get you on a train and tell you my usual whereabouts. Without looking back, Mouse walked away, whistling. Mike sat in the wagon, watching him saunter down the road. He tried to imagine what it felt like to have no worries, to have nothing but a bedroll to carry in the wide world in front of you. There was something exciting about the idea of taking a train to the big city, sleeping who knows where and sneaking into a theater. Mike would go with Mouse if it weren't for Frankie. On his own, he could make do with little. It would be so easy. Guilt squirmed into his thoughts. Be my sweet boys and promise to take care of each other. How could he even think of leaving Frankie? The kid loved Mike, and Mike loved him. Mike shook his head, disgusted with himself. What kind of brother was he? Mouse disappeared over a rise in the road. Mike flicked the reins and the horse walked forward. Mouse was right. There was always a war somewhere in the world, and Mike had his own, fighting for Frankie. He made the delivery to Four Corners, collected the money, and drove back to Bishop's. The entire way, he felt like a wild bird trapped in a house, swooping up and down and into walls, wings flapping against the windows, trying to find a way out. Okay, so now describe Pennyweather. We found a little bit more about her. We knew she wasn't nice, but now we find she's even taking the jams and jellies that should be for the boys and selling them and making a profit. So we know that she's money hungry, she's selfish, she doesn't really care about the kids. And then what advice does Mouse give Mike, and what is his reasoning? What does he tell him about what he should do about Frankie? Remember, he gives him some advice about what he should do. Okay, this is a kid who has a lot of burdens, doesn't he? He's going to have to figure out what he's going to do and where they're going to go. All right, have a good